Okay, so we are testing the sound but also the image quality. So hopefully it's not too bright, no shadow, and just generally looking good. So we have 3 units with big guns, our heavy support. We have the Canoptic Doomstalkers, the Doomsday Arcs, and of course the Locust Heavy Destroyers. But how about the Doom Scythe? Are we missing out? It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, today we are talking Necron 10th edition Codex strategy. We are looking at the Necron Doomscythe. This is a unit we don't see on the table very often, and I appreciate why that might be. However, are we missing out on this unit? Because it actually has some pretty cool rules. Now, just like myself, no doubt you are doing exactly the same when it comes to choosing some big guns for your army. You're probably taking Locust Heavy Destroyers because, let's be honest, you can't go wrong with those. You might be taking Canoptic Doomstalkers, especially if you're in the Canoptic Court. Or potentially you're taking Doomsday Arcs because the model looks pretty cool and you can do some good damage with that unit. However, what about the Doom Scythe? Because that also has a big gun and it has some pretty cool rules. Well, let's find out. Hit the like button and let's get to it. Now, I know some of you may be playing the Monolith as your big gun. Fair play, but that's a lot more points than the units we are talking about here. So for now, in this video, we're going to ignore the Monolith. Okay, so let's start off by looking at the stats for the Doom Scythe. Of course, it is a vehicle and a flyer. It moves 20 inches because it's a flyer. Now, it's toughness 9, which is of course the same as a Doomstalker or Doomsday Arc, and even better than Locust Heavy Destroyers. It has a 3+ save, the same as all of the other units. Whilst it has no 4+ invulnerable save, there is a detachment, the Hypercrypt Legion, where you can give a 4+ invulnerable save to a Doom Scythe, if you want to. It's got 12 wounds, the same as 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, the same as a Doomstalker, slightly less than a Doomsday Arc, which is 14 wounds, and it does degrade the same as the other 2 vehicle units. It's Leadership 7, which is slightly better than the Doomstalker at Leadership 8, and the same as a Doomsday Arc and Locust Heavy Destroyers. Now, it doesn't have any OC, but then it is a flyer, it's in the air, it's not going to score objectives. That certainly is a downside for this unit. But what about the gun? So the Heavy Death Ray is a sustained hit D3. So every 6 that you score to hit, you roll a dice, you get D3 extra hits. So at least 1. However, you do only have 3 attacks. But those 3 attacks hit on 3s. They are strength 16 and -4 damage. And the damage is D6 + 1. So you're guaranteed at least 2 damage, but hopefully more. We've also got the Twin Tesla Destructor, which is also sustained hits, but this time it's a fixed 2, and it's twin linked, so you can re-roll the wounds. That also is 36 inches, it's 6 attacks, it's strength 8, 0 OP because it's Tesla, and 2 damage. 2 damage is pretty good. Admittedly, there is no AP, but this is just a secondary gun. The main gun, the Heavy Death Ray, yes, it's called a Heavy Death Ray, also has a special ability. Atavistic Insignation. What the hell, Games Workshop? Just give us a normal name. Normal name that we can pronounce. Thank you. Each time this model targets an enemy unit with its Heavy Death Ray, your opponent must declare if that unit will stand firm or duck for cover. If it stands firm when resolving ranged attacks against that unit this phase, a successful unmodified hit roll of a 5+ scores critical hits. So basically, if your opponent says, no, I'm just going to stand firm, shoot me, well then you get sustained D3 hits on a 5+. That's very nice, but Not only that, it lasts until the end of the phase, so any other unit that shoots into this unit also gets sustained hits on a 5+. That's really nice. However, what about if they don't stand firm? Well, they have the option to duck. If it ducks for cover until the start of your next shooting phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So until your next shooting phase, that unit is going to be -1 to hit. So we could use this very tactically, a unit which can do a lot of damage to us in the shooting phase. We can make them -1, or if our opponent decides not to go for that option and they stand firm, well, for the rest of the game, not for the rest of the game, for the rest of the phase, when we shoot them, we're going to be critical hits on a 5+. That's a really nice added bonus to what is already a pretty decent gun with -4 and d6 + 1 damage at strength 16. Very nice. Now, of course, it does have melee attacks as well, but it's really not that great as you would expect on a flyer. It's 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, strength 6, 0 AP and 1 damage. So yeah, it's not going to do a great deal. It does have reanimation protocol, so you can bring back D3 lost wounds in your command phase, and it's got deadly demise, so if it does explode, then it's D3 mortal wounds within 6 inches. Ideally, you don't want it exploding, but I think there could be a really good use for these Doom Scythes that maybe we're overlooking. Let's have a look at this use. Let me know what you think, and of course, don't forget to subscribe because I really appreciate it. Help me get to 30,000 subscribers. We're not far away. Now, of course, in terms of points, the Doom Scythe is more expensive than the other units that we've looked at. 230 points, the Doomsday Ark 200 points, definitely more expensive than the Canoptic Doomstalkers and the Locust Heavy Destroyers. However, the main gun, the big gun, does have the advantage of affecting the rest of the army. As I said, if the opponent decides to hold firm, then the rest of your units shooting into that unit will get critical hits in a 5+. Could be really useful if you have a gun which has the lethal ability, for example. Or if the unit decides to duck, then for the rest of their turn until your next shooting phase, that unit is going to be -1 to hit. So it affects the whole of your army effectively. However, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking take 2 Doom Scythes in the Hypercrypt Legion. These, of course, will go into reserve and come in on turn 2. Now, right there, you might be thinking, well, that's an advantage. Disadvantage, you lose those big guns on turn 1. And, of course, you'd be right. However, that's just how it's going to have to be for this particular tactic. Maybe we could have some Locust Heavy Destroyers on the table as well, just to help with that turn 1 anti-tank gun. So in turn 2, we're going to come in from reserve, and we're going to come in our deployment zone. The guns are 36 inches, so we can easily get into our deployment zone and shoot our guns. Now, if you had the Silent King in the list, and you came down within 6 inches of the Silent King, well, that's even better. If you use the Pharaon of the Stars with the Silent King, then units within 6 inches can reroll 1s to hit and 1s to wound. So now you've got 6 shots from the 2 Doom Scythes, being able to reroll 1s to hit. I always roll a 1 when I'm playing a big gun, and also reroll 1s to wound. Obviously, you've got to be willing to play the Silent King, and that's not going to be always the case. It's not the greatest unit in the world, certainly not for competitive play, but it's a fun unit and it looks awesome on the table. But even without the Silent King there, I think you can see where I'm going with this. Reserve them and come in on turn 2 in your deployment zone, shoot the guns, let the rest of the army benefits from that. At the end of your opponent's turn, then you take them off of the board, and then in your turn, you bring them down in your deployment zone, shoot the guns, and then in your opponent's turn, you take them off the board. And those Doom Scythes don't have to move anywhere. Because, of course, when you come in this way, you count as having moved. So you don't have to move at all, which means you can stay out of danger back in your deployment zone. At last. Okay, so obviously the Doom Scythe isn't necessarily the most competitive unit. It has some issues. Of course, to do this you're not going to be shooting turn 1. 2, potentially it could be destroyed. But then anything can be destroyed, right? Now, if your opponent is of course obsessed with destroying one of your Doom Scythes, then you do have the... Joking. Of course, you do have the stratagem to give a 4+ invulnerable save to your Doom Scythe, if that is needed. Now, as I said, this isn't necessarily the most competitive unit, but I think it certainly has legs. For God's sake! It certainly has legs, especially for, well, basement gaming, just for gaming with your buddies. And if you're playing the Silent King because you love that model, and I know a lot of people do that, playing 2 Doom Scythes definitely might be worth considering. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments box below. This series of videos is trying to look at units that we don't really play that much and see if we can make some use of them. I've got some more videos like this for you just there, and here's some battle reports with me using some of these tactics.